Kicking off with Welcome to Masters of Scale? Yeah. Wait, I get to say that?
There you go. Here you are.
No, I don't think you understand. I just want to say that it's an honor to be kicking off Masters of Scale with someone who I think is a freaking superstar in many ways, but more importantly to a group of people, a community around the world that I've been blessed to be a part of called First Robotics. And I've seen it firsthand on how a community like First changes communities like the one I come from. So, that being said, welcome to Masters of Scale. Here we are with a superstar engineer, entrepreneur, Austin Russell.
Well, thank you. Great to be here with you, Will.
And I know all about you, but I'm going to engage in the conversation and learn about you alongside a lot of the people that probably don't know about you. So if I over-exaggerate on my excitement, one, it's not an over-exaggeration because every time I hear your accomplishments and the things that you're working on, I'm excited and inspired. So one thing I'm going to kick off with is you were a part of First growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. And amazing program there, by the way, and awesome to see your involvement in that.
What high school did you go to?
So I went, for a couple years to high school of this place called St. Margaret's. It was down in Southern California.
So you're a Cali guy.
Yeah, OG Cali.
That's
and now also Florida. We have the Luminar headquarters set up there, and then also our offices for software and AI out in the Bay Area. A little bit, always traveling around.
And how old are you now?
So I am 28 now. Yeah.
And when you you graduated high school, what year?
Man, that must have been like 2012, 2013, something. Yeah. Exactly.
Wow. 2012, 2013. I just want to put some emphasis on that. 2023 now. That's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And in 10 years, the things that you've been able to do in your teens and 20s is freaking amazing. Like, you have to understand that type of growth, idea to execution, to adoption, to success, that's not normal. And let's hope it's normal in these times, because the world, these kids need to see what's possible.
Yeah, let's make it more normal.
You know what I mean? Because we are living in times where the tools that we have to manifest ideas, they're here. I just want to point that out, right? You were self-taught in many ways. Can you talk about that and how you learned as a kid?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had started off at a very early age, always wanting to know the hows and whys of, the inner workings of everything in the world. And I think it became very clear that, a lot of traditional school and education wasn't going to be able to teach you the kind of things that were particularly applicable to building and to whether it be different kinds of projects or from an engineering standpoint all the way to from a company standpoint, a corporate standpoint, to financial standpoint, whatever it may be. And just got really deep into, the whole aspect of becoming self-taught and learning about the world. And, a lot of that is just reading books. It's reading scientific papers. It's articles, lectures, whatever it may be. I used to have a habit of going on to like online MIT or Stanford physics lectures and just watching them at 2x or 3x speed.
Yeah, but how do you go from reading? Just because you read it doesn't mean you know how to apply it. Just because you absorb it doesn't mean you rinse it out. What gave you that?
Absolutely, and I think that was growing up as well. One of the big things that I think became very clear opportunistically of how you can be able to learn and build at the same time, and not just memorize things for the sake of memorizing things. So, early on I converted my parents' garage, into an electronics lab and optics lab back when I was 10, 11 years old, and got a really early start on all of those different kinds of projects. But what was interesting to me was just how can you find new ways to be able to improve the performance or speed of devices, or invent a new way to be able to solve a specific engineering problem, or just think of all the ways that you can use interdisciplinary information to be able to build value, however small or large in terms of the impact. And it kind of teaches you early on in all the early projects that I did, kind of what's possible and how you really can make a difference and impact if you apply knowledge. But I think the way that you ultimately apply and scale yourself has to be through some kind of business and some kind of endeavor at the end of the day as well.
Who were your inspirations? Like what did mom and dad do?
So, my dad is commercial real estate, and a brokerage, and my mom did a bunch of different things from modeling to public speaking to other kinds of endeavors. So completely unrelated to any of the inventions, you kind of joke that it's like, you just go like do your black magic in the garage and, we'll slip food under the door and just do your thing.
So you're truly autodidactic, like self-taught.
100%. Yeah, it could not be more different in some. I mean, I think in terms of like principles and values, it's great, but like in terms of professional and career endeavors, and scientific understanding, everything could not be more different. So it's my dad actually even to this day still works at the company there too, helping on all of our real estate and facilities.
That's great. That's amazing.
Projects. So there you go. So there, everything has a place in this world that can make a difference.
And so you said you barely graduated high school?
Yeah, I didn't spend that much time in high school in the latter years of that. I was actually I was spending more time at this place called the Beckman Laser Institute, growing up. And
wait. You were 18 years old.
Yeah, I was probably 16, 17.
16, 17.
Yeah.
Hanging out at a laser institute?
Yeah.
What was happening there?
Well, they had seen some of the work that I was doing in terms of the different laser-related projects.
So you were already rocking with lasers back at 16, 17.
Oh, yeah. Probably like, I don't know, 13, 14 was when I started, but then it got pretty serious, by the time I was 16, 17 in terms of, creating some breakthrough inventions.
4 years span. You started at 13. By 17, you're rocking at a laser institute. And they were geeking off of the stuff that you've been working on.
Exactly. A lot of the fundamental principles that it was doing is something that was unique in the academic world, because it would have the opportunity to okay, how can you build something new? And I didn't want to have something where I was stuck in academia. I wanted to actually be able to create useful innovations that were applicable to the real world, which is why I ultimately didn't last in academia. Most of the time, when you talk about people like the optics, photonics, laser world, and physics world, that's kind of the goal is, become a tenured professor, in those domains and regimes. But I think that was something that was different, but fortunately got some early traction. And like I said, the beauty is that all this information is available online. If you look at these online lectures that were previously only available to graduate students, these programs, you can now, I think in less than a month, I watched all 4 years worth of lectures, on the subjects. You can do it. There's nothing stopping you if you do back to back.
And that's when you decided to drop out of college?
I ended up going to Stanford for a few months, it was less than 6 months, before dropping out and going full time on my company, Luminar, and just really went all in to be able to make it successful. I kind of knew I was going to be dropping out no matter what. It was actually Peter Thiel that really convinced me to kind of push me over the edge to do it very quickly.
Were your parents I don't know, Austin, maybe you should? Or they're
like, this is a horrible idea. What are you doing? But yeah, it's funny the way things work out. I mean, the reality is that I think, it sounds kind of crazy. It's you have some 16 or 17-year-old that's going, I'm going to build some crazy laser device that's going to revolutionize the automotive industry and beat out Apple and Google and every major automaker towards creating a new LiDAR system that will prevent accidents and enable autonomous driving and do all these things. So, you can imagine people not taking this particularly seriously, and much less, for anyone, much less someone that was 16 or 17 years old at the time. I knew that being in academia, it wasn't going to foster the right environment. The other hard part also is that, with universities, it's when you develop new technologies at universities, if you do it in that environment, they own your IP. You don't just get to do your thing. And keep it all to yourself from a business standpoint. It's something that's actually a really sensitive topic. Like, you can have the best lab in the world that's set up for you, but, is it really your technology anymore? And that's the point of why I knew I had to do something on my own.
Do you think that universities, given this new intersection that we are with generative AI, professors in your pocket, success stories like yours where you decided to not pursue the traditional path, do you think universities might have to rethink how they work with students and solving problems and building companies?
Absolutely. I think it's really got to change. And I think it's something that's very solvable as well. It's pretty clear that if you give people and encourage people to have an opportunity to build something, a project, a prototype, or a company, that's something that's generally very positive for the world. And I think having a little bit less of an insular view and more of kind of like a worldview approach at that will be particularly beneficial, for both universities and society at large, for that matter.
I would just want to go back to, young Austin, which is 10 years ago, 11 years ago. It's not that long ago.
Yeah.
To you, it's half your life.
Yeah.
But it's really not that long ago. And the reason why I want to emphasize on that is, we're seeing the world change when now the world understands generative AI. We're seeing like people like, oh my gosh, it's going to change my job. It's going to take away my career. White collar jobs are threatened.
Surprise.
Blue collar jobs are threatened. But then new industries are going to pop up.
Yeah.
And I believe, truly, kids in first, I want them to know about you because you're just like them. I see them all the time when I go to the championships. It's a unique, amazing community of folks that the world doesn't really recognize the way they recognize football players that graduate from high school, then go to college, to go professional. Like, there's shows about them. It's called the draft, right?
Right.
There's an NFL draft. Like, they identify them. They put them on a pedestal. They let you know, and it's great that they do that for athletes. They do that for, storytelling. There's an Oscar every single year just to watch people walk the red carpet, and it's awesome that they do that. But the Austins of the world, they don't get acknowledged when they go from college to company, or when they go from like, I got an idea, to company that the world needs.
I think you actually highlighted a really important point that, in popular culture, this kind of entrepreneurship oftentimes isn't particularly celebrated. Like, even, business is seen as business. It's not necessarily what's actually changing the world, and people don't realize that you can have all these positive effects of the world. You can do great things and make money at the same time. And I think that the important part, though, is that when you look at the kind of coverage for businesses, as you're saying, or the movies or TV shows that you're highlighting, you take a look at all the ones that have been created around entrepreneurs, and it's almost always either some kind of extreme drama or plot twist or failure or fraud. People don't create movies around all these incredible success stories, that, or the hundreds of entrepreneurs. No, they'll create it instead about, I don't know, Adam Newman or Elizabeth Holmes, rather than the 100 entrepreneurs that were actually successful, creating like 100 billion companies and the journeys they had to go through, to be able to do that. And then obviously on the flip side, you have the physicists of the Isaac Newtons of the world from hundreds of years ago that I think did some amazing things that are pioneering, and like the kinds of things that you hope to be able to do from a physics standpoint. But I think you highlight some really good points there, and I think that's something that we also have an opportunity to change and shift, in the broader landscape. And obviously things like FIRST are great at identifying talent early on, encouraging it, and making it successful. So
being self-taught, going on like online, absorbing lectures on an engineering, scientific level, reading papers. Did you do the same thing on an entrepreneurial level, on a business side?
It's a good question around that. And a lot of that stuff just has to be learned. There's actually a lot less information available in terms of the entrepreneurial skill set and business skill sets. It's trial by fire, sink or swim kind of environment.
Have you ever sunk?
Well, I mean, you always feel like you're drowning, but the key is to never actually. You always find a way to be successful. Like, you kind of have that failure is not an option kind of mentality for it. And it takes a different kind of personality altogether. Like Jensen, the founder CEO of NVIDIA there too, said like, would you do it all over again? There was like, absolutely not. Elon's like, oh, it's like chewing glass while staring into a black hole. That's what entrepreneurship is like. You have all these accounts. You just kind of have to have this inherent drive to want to do it. And the most important thing there is having the right kinds of other business leaders that you can interface with, interact with, in the mentorship. That's where things like the Thiel Fellowship program were very helpful early on, that Peter Thiel created as part of the whole, the quote is like, oh, I'll give you $100,000 to drop out of school and do your company. But the reality is that $100,000 in the corporate context is like, it doesn't get you very far. It's like almost nothing. Maybe pay some rent, in the Bay Area at least, So the reality is that it's all about the network. It's all about the people. And it's all
How
about
did you
what
build
can
your
learn.
network?
So, I would say there's different people that are kind of super connectors in different worlds. There's like the people that are the super connectors in the optics and photonics world. There's the people that are like these super connectors in the business, financial, and venture world, the universe of what Stanford was, of what the Thiel Fellowship was, of everything on the entrepreneurship side. There's a lot of great stuff. It just centered in Palo Alto, where I was based out of for many years, for a long time, and Orlando, Florida. Which brings me to the other super connector of this guy, Jason Eichenholz, for example, early on, who is this, he jokingly called him the Kevin Bacon of the photonics industry, because he's like, 6 degrees of separation from like everybody. You kind of have these different people, these different universes that are there. It turns out Orlando just happened to be a huge epicenter for optics photonics and coming off the Space Coast, the Cape Canaveral. And there are some things though that you absolutely can. And, when it comes to looking at other kinds of pitch decks and the evolutions of them throughout the years. There's a lot of this stuff is available online when it comes to, talking to early employees at these different companies, when it comes to talking to other founders, a lot of people are very excited to be able to have, to meet with you on these things and teach. There's resources like one of the top apps I had on my phone throughout the time when we were in the kind of the venture field and world, it was like PitchBook, it's like, it's the kind of get you familiarized with like, okay, here are all the different stages of like how companies can grow and scale. Here are the metrics associated with that. Here are the kinds of financings and rounds that they've raised. Obviously for this, we had to chart a completely different path, this wasn't like in the case of Luminar, it wasn't just another software company or app, on your phone. This was something that, was a hardware system and technology that involved laser physics, working from the semiconductor level up, and then also working in the automotive industry altogether, which all those things are very, very hard things. And most venture capitalists will tell you never to do, because you'll just never succeed at building something or working in that world or field, even independently, much less together. But then once you're in and once you're able to do it, it's incredibly valuable and has just a massive, massive moat around it. So, I knew I was going to be able to pull it off, so kind of went all in on that, got the right people around it. And and the best part is, as you scale up, you hire these people too. That's the most important thing in terms of, here we are on Masters of Scale, that's how you scale.
What was your first break? Like if this didn't happen, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. If this didn't happen, what is that if this didn't happen?
I'll tell you this, there's a lot of things that didn't happen along the way. I could probably think of like 100 examples that had to fall into line. Again, not necessarily naturally, but like by force. Like, even just in the, if you're talking back in the earlier days of like, how you fund the business. Like, venture capitalists like wouldn't fund this kind of business. Like it was not a thing, So like what I had to do is I had to come up with some crazy scheme to be able to just generate enough revenue or profits to like build a business out of it that was unrelated. Like, so what I would do is I would rent out these large houses, first off in Atherton, not too far from the Stanford campus, and like created what's called like a hacker house, and then basically sublet all the individual rooms to other entrepreneurs, that would live and work out of there, and kind of build that community. Duplicated this model to be able to generate profits to initially build up the business and, live for free at the same time. So that was something that, was like a totally random adjacent endeavor that ended up, working out very successfully to be able to help fund some of the initial aspects of the company and the business, early on. That was where I was doing, laser related projects. So it's kind of funny how that all works out. But yeah, you have to get creative in problem solving. Like I said, you have that mentality, failure is not an option. So you obviously have to make sure that you're set yourself up such that, if something goes wrong or whatever it may be, or one variable and factor that, things don't go totally sideways for the business. And I think we've done that, throughout the whole course of our history.
From the outside, it looks like you have a really unshaken business. Like everything is, wow, look at this guy. Under 30, very rare for, like, you're like the LeBron James in your field. Like, he's straight out of freaking high school, went pro. Sounds like you.
There you go.
But you said entrepreneurship is hard and there's lots of bad days. Tell us a story of like Austin bad day.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of every day. There's always things to do. There's always fires. There's always, up, down, left, right of whatever problem you have to solve for in any given day. Not necessarily like at the company level, but just like random specific things that you want to be able to address. Because again, is you got to keep the ball moving forward. From like a macroeconomic standpoint, it's kind of crazy to see how certain things can come in waves. And there's times where, despite the business being the exact same in terms of the fundamentals and the trajectory and even proving out milestones along the way for what you do, the world is not rational. And the way that this stuff works is not, like I said, it's not logical and rational. I think, I'll say this, like even right now we're going through like one phase of that cycle, where we have this like dramatic undervaluation of the business. And that's the kind of thing, of course, there's opportunities and opportunistic ways that you can build on that and leverage that. It's very easy on the inside to like get caught up in kind of different specific day-to-day details of things that you're dealing with that don't really matter in the scheme of things, but just the stuff that, you're arbitrarily focusing on. On the outside, it's very easy to get caught up and like actually miss the big picture as well around the fundamental value that's created. I think that those disconnects can often be harder for entrepreneurs, but I think the point is you just need to make sure that you need to have your business set up for success in every kind of environment and execute on the milestones, execute on the programs. It's this kind of thing where, you have this outcome of where it's like very, very clear in your head, like how we're going to execute on these programs, how, we'll see Luminar in every car, how, it can be $1 trillion company one day and everything. Like, we're not going to stop until we make that happen. And it's just like, it's just funny. No one would believe you that you could do it, pull anything off like like this in the venture days early on when you're financing it. There's different stages that you go through as an entrepreneur and different things that everybody deals with. So,
has there ever been a time where you had doubt, like the vision, where it was harder than you thought it was going to be, or anything that shook up your own personal belief in what it is you were trying to do? Or have you always been like undeniable, this is going to work?
No, I mean, I'm pretty unshaken. It's pretty much always been, and it's funny, like a lot of people, they go, oh, you must have doubts, you must have this. It's like, no, it's just unquestionably, it's going to happen. Like there's not even like a sliver of doubt in my mind that you're not going to be able to do it over the, like, it's impossible to like predict things in kind of the immediate term, which is kind of funny. It's a little counterintuitive, like relative to the long term. In the case of, like, for example, car accidents, like this is something that's we don't have an opportunity to have this persist as a societal problem, to lose 1.5 million lives every year for the entire rest of, humanity's existence. Like, it's very clear that vehicles are extremely inefficient as it stands right now as a mode of transport. And one day, it'll even be robo-taxis everywhere. That's not today. That's not what the business model is fundamentally dependent on. It's more around improving safety and enabling autonomy sort of in more constrained scenarios like highways, that are realistic So that's really where we're working closely with automakers on. And, we met every major milestone along the way, along the course of the trajectory of the company, are continuing to do so. And I think that's important, is have that long-term perspective. And that conviction is so important. Like, it's funny, just the prior week, was having this really cool conversation, with Warren Buffett on exactly this topic there of,
You were chatting with Warren?
Yeah. He's great. It's great to meet. And, it was fantastic to see. You just have to have that conviction. It was the same thing from his story, like early on, all the way up through the years. And it's like, now it looks almost like magical, in hindsight, they're like, how did you do this? But it's like, oh no, you have the same mentality and conviction throughout, the history to do it. There's the environment doesn't always make sense. People are not always rational. Things don't always happen more immediate basis or even quarter to quarter basis the way you think it's going to go, but you have that right long-term perspective on it and problem solving ability and fundamentals of what you can do and build, and that's how you fundamentally change the world.
In culture, popular culture, especially when you're young, you have the giants, the established kings of those fields, queens of those fields. And Elon Musk insulted LiDAR for years. So how were you able to tackle his perspective on something that you fundamentally believe in and not be daunted or influenced by his perspective? Like, at any point in time where you're like, well, maybe Elon's right.
No, definitely not on that one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's funny. I think the hard part is in these kinds of things, like obviously everyone's going to be going after is promoting their own technology and approach. The hard part is specifically with Tesla is that since 2015 they promised a certain set of capabilities, with these vehicles on, more specifically, Elon promised a certain set of capabilities on stage, for these vehicles that they're shipping. That was essentially an upgraded system replacement for Mobileye, which is this camera-based computer vision system for assisted driving. The problem was where it came into play, and I think a lot of the friction of why it's been so controversial in terms of what he's saying is because he's calling an assisted driving system an autonomous driving system. And the reality is it is great to see some improvements for some basic level of assisted driving capabilities, but it doesn't solve some of the fundamentals of what you need to do to prevent accidents. Like, literally, if you put like a crash dummy right in front of the car, like a child pedestrian crash dummy, like it doesn't come to a safe stop, like at a reasonable speed, like even just the most basic tests. I think that's where there's very, very clear opportunity to make a difference. This is the reason why, we're already working with the majority of major automakers to be able to transform what they're doing, to be able to prevent accidents, to be able to start enabling real autonomy in more constrained scenarios. And folks like Volvo taking leadership from a safety standpoint, Mercedes taking leadership from an autonomous driving standpoint. They're the first ahead of anyone to be able to get, for example, like the level 3 certification, for autonomous driving. Yeah, it'll be great to get out there deployed across the board. So that's really going to be the question in this case, like in the Tesla case, is how they've been so far ahead on EVs of now how they're going to catch up on AVs. If you want to be able to prevent accidents and do autonomous driving, this is not an optional system. This is something that's fundamentally required to be able to prevent accidents. I mean, there's a reason why there's no car today that's uncrashable. There's no car today that does autonomous driving. It doesn't require constant attention from the human. Like, this is the fundamental thing that we're actually able to solve for with the LiDAR, and that's why automakers from around the world have been lining up and collaborating with us for years, spending billions of dollars to adopt and integrate this technology across their vehicle lineups. So,
yeah, you've described yourself as a chief autonomous vehicle skeptic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another huge fact. It's kind of funny. People think like, wait, why? You're the skeptic? You're the one that's like in the industry and like leading the industry.
Why skeptic?
There's just all these like insane bombastic claims that people make in the autonomous vehicle industry that are just straight up not true. And I think the hard part is that it can reduce the credibility of a lot of companies and people. If you remember a handful of years ago, people were promising this dream and vision around like welcoming our, robot overlords by being able to be ferried in an autonomous vehicle from point A to point B anywhere in the world with millions of driverless cars being deployed. Like, obviously that didn't happen. That was never going to happen.
You don't think it ever will happen? Like driverless cars, self-drive?
Oh, it will. It will. It's just like decades. It's not like, next year. It's just there's a different kind of time scale for these things. And the point is like there's fundamental problems that have to be solved that aren't just about like a leap to replacing drivers. Like, there's a very clear value proposition, and arguably maybe even a 10x bigger value proposition, certainly for the foreseeable future, of being able to enhance drivers rather than replace drivers. And part of the problem is, again, just people have just dramatically underestimated how difficult it really is to truly replace a driver and how difficult it is to enable autonomous driving-like capabilities. For the same reason that even with the most advanced camera-based systems out there on the road, that have historically existed, you still can barely come even to a safe stop for something right in front of the car, much less, complex scenarios. There's a reason why cars still get in accidents. No matter what kind of car, what kind of software, what kind of package you have on it, they still get in accidents today. That's the whole point, is that of the kinds of problems that we have to solve first with this technology, with the LiDAR systems and the right software and AI systems that we've been doing. And that's why we're seeing these large-scale adoptions and why automakers are signing, multi-billion-dollar contracts with us to be able to see this scale come into effect.
And just layman's question for the field, what's the difference between LiDAR and camera-based systems, fundamentally?
Yeah, so the whole point of a LiDAR system is it gives you a 3D view and perspective on the environment. So you're measuring the exact distance down to centimeter level precision, in our case, of everything going on around you. A camera will give you a 2D view and perspective of, generally red, green, and blue colors, in the environment. And it's great for kind of the kinds of things that humans see, but when it comes to computers and processing and AI and all that, there's only so much you can do without knowing the true depth information of what is actually out there. The reality is that even despite all the amazing advancements in AI that have been seen over the past decade, and will in decades to come, there is no one-to-one replica for a complex problem with the level of accuracy that's required, or anything in development that's even remotely in the same universe of what's required of what humans can do when driving. The thing is that on average, there's a fatality about once every 100 million miles out on the road, and some kind of collision every 500,000 miles out on the road, which, by the way, is way too much, far too often. Come to think of it, that's like, billions of mistakes that you had to avoid, in order to be able to get there. It's why it's so important that for these kinds of systems, you have accuracy that's not just 99%. It's got to be 99.9999999, 10 nines worth of accuracy and reliability. And that's the whole point around, LiDAR, is that you get a ground truth view, basically like near 100% accuracy of what is actually going on around you. Whereas with a camera, you may get a 95% accuracy, or maybe one day even a 99% accuracy of understanding what's going on.
And cameras obviously have its limitations on when they work. Is there any limitations around when LiDAR is not?
Yeah, I mean, you take a look, for example, in the cameras, the majority of accidents happen at night. You take a look at cameras that don't see very well at night at all. The whole point of the LiDAR, in addition to being able to get the 3D depth, is that it sees the exact same, whether it's pitch black outside or whether there's bright sunlight shining into the sensor. You get the same output because it's actively illuminating with the laser.
What about fog?
Rain, fog, snow, is able to see through it. It's not like exact same thing. There's some level of attenuation. It's not the same thing without it, but it's certainly better than what a human would see in those kinds of equivalent conditions, and certainly better than a camera. Yeah, and the reality is, if you're going like 75 miles an hour through pea soup fog, you probably have something wrong, as well. So, that you shouldn't be doing that.
Can you explain the mission of Luminar and how it evolved into 100 plus 100 plus 100?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, it's really all about that last 1%. It's going from the 99% to the 100%, or 99.9999999 at least. That's what counts for everything when it comes to a safety standpoint, when it comes to autonomous driving standpoint, and that's what we're delivering to all of these automakers. In terms of the long-term plan, as you pointed out, we set this 100-year goal and vision for the company to have an opportunity to save as many as 100 million lives and 100 trillion hours of people's time over the next 100 years, which sounds pretty crazy.
You'll be 127.
Yeah, well, let's go, you know?
At the rate of how humanity is going with, synthetic biology and extending life,
exactly. Full brain transplant, No,
you could be fully functional.
I think, though, that what's important and some of the most significant inventions, obviously transcend the inventor or even the company or whatever it may be. You take the Volvo case of, being the first to introduce the modern 3-point seatbelt. That was like 1958, 1959, something that ultimately obviously got adopted across the broader industry and ultimately became a regulatory requirement. It's no different with this kind of technology in terms of what you can see and how the kind of impact that it can have. Because when you take a look at vehicle accidents, it's actually, by some metrics, it's the largest and most significant cause of fatalities between ages 1 and 44 that we can do by just not allowing cars and the drivers of cars to smash into the things right in front of them. It can sound simple enough, but current technology and current trajectory is not enough to do it. That's the whole point of LiDAR, software, AI that's come into play. And that's what we're helping make happen. In addition to that, you just take a look at the economic impact beyond even just the life saving. We're talking, trillions of dollars annually in terms of economic impact across the globe. Accidents are expensive. People dying is expensive. There's just massive challenges associated with this. And a great example of the perfect kind of thing of how we can help society and build value. And that's kind of part of the core mission philosophy that I've also had that I think will be very important, and why we have to have this very long-term vision that transcends just kind of the immediate view, so that everyone in the entire company, in the entire ecosystem around us, everyone that's participating in our journey is all 100% aligned with what we're doing. That's the thing that people just really haven't been working on and haven't been focused on, and something that finally we have the technology to be able to do.
You think that fully autonomous, where human does not have to, pay attention, that type of vehicle experience, driving experience, is years away?
I would say that when you're talking about completely driverless, no driver in the car altogether, that's like decade plus. If you're talking about, more focused scenarios, and it's debatable how much you call this autonomous driving versus assisted driving or whatever it may be.
But what about those little robots on Melrose that are just giving like those little packages to people?
Well, those are great. Like I said, here's the difference: is that the cars can actually kill people. The little robots in Melrose, it doesn't matter. The 99% accuracy doesn't matter as much. If it trips and falls over. Again, it goes back to the 99%. If you run over one out of every 100 people that the car sees, that doesn't work. There's not a viable solution. Maybe that accuracy works for like facial recognition or something to like unlock your phone. It doesn't work for autonomous driving. So, I think the point and the important and critical part is just the impact of what we can have by making that difference, saving those lives, and like I said, probably more than any other philanthropic mission, while also building just incredible value. And that's what we're doing. That's exactly what we're executing against. So going back to, what's happening in the near term and really what Luminar is enabling is that we're actually able to successfully enable substantial opportunities for reduction in collisions and different collision scenarios for assisted driving, while also enabling, autonomy in more constrained ways, for example, on highway scenarios where you can take your hands off, eyes off, read a book, use your phone, work on your laptop, watch a movie, take a nap, etc. But you're still in the seat.
Oh, you can take a nap.
Yeah, that's the plan in terms of. I mean, obviously, it takes collaboration with the automaker to be able to do that. But in terms of the capabilities and what's there, and
That's fully autonomous if you like taking naps.
yeah, absolutely. So that's here. I mean, you take a look at it. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we're doing for the future generations of Mercedes and Volvo and all the other automakers that we're working with to enable those kinds of capabilities. Again, the focus is on highways. That's really the scenario that is most relevant because it's more constrained. Urban environments are very, very challenging because there's just so many variables, so many things you can throw at it. Highways makes a ton of sense.
I met you through Marcus, CTO of Mercedes, top over at Daimler. And we went to your house, which, by the way, is like, some Tony Stark shit. So sorry for saying the S word. And as I was driving, I'm like, wow, I went to school over there. So salute. Pretty cool vibes.
Thank you.
So can you walk us through the evolution and how manufacturers' reactions change as tech did? And how did you meet Mercedes and then the other, auto manufacturing giants that you work with? And how do you choose to have a closer relationship with one manufacturer versus the other, especially when the whole premise of what you're doing is to proliferate it across, as many manufacturers as possible?
Yeah.
How do you work that balance out?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question for everything. And I think all automakers are different. They're all their own flavor, but certain ones are much farther ahead than others. Certain ones are more ambitious, more leaning into newer technologies, and are generally the spearheads of these things. There's the leaders and the followers. And I think we've done a pretty good job of focusing and working with partnering on the leaders here in terms of, you take a look at different kinds of historical technologies for, safety related systems and technologies. Volvo has led that. You take a look at, other kinds of advanced technologies out on vehicles and general car tech. Mercedes has historically led that. And it's why it really made sense to start with those two companies. Of course, we work with a whole swath and array of automakers that includes all the way from like Daimler Truck, the largest producer of commercial trucks, to technology companies like NVIDIA and Mobileye. And I think that's something that is really powerful, though, to have an opportunity to be able to work with these companies. Obviously, it's not easy in terms of working with directly with these automakers. And by the way, against the convention of every traditional way that new companies have tried to work with automakers, normally you have a bunch of different middlemen, tier one suppliers, other kinds of things in between. It's almost unheard of for a new technology company to work directly with automakers.
I know.
Yeah.
They have internal teams that trying to solve a similar problem, and then you have like this like political, squabble where it's like some R&D team over there is like, well, we have the solution. Why don't we deploy our solution? And then when you compare tech for tech, usually the internal team very rarely has the punch that the outside team does, and we see that with like why Apple acquires more of their innovation than build it within, because within you have all these like restrictions. They can't go as fast as they need to go, and so it's usually the outside. So how did you balance that dance? Like, what was the first car manufacturer that reached out to you? Where you're like, oh my gosh, we just got a call from, holy shit, this shit is fucking real now. like what was that?
That was probably Volvo at first. Yeah,
Wow.
Exactly.
If I'm making beats and I got a call from Quincy Jones, like, yo, Quincy Jones just called me right now, and he said my beats sound amazing, because Quincy Jones is like pristine, clean, premium sound. So if you're making safety systems, LiDAR, and you get a call from the OG seatbelt motherfuckers, bro, that is fucking amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it was pretty crazy.
Sorry for the curse words, Masters of Scale.
I think it's absolutely right. It was absolutely right. It's the world's leading LiDAR experts, there that were, and this is the funny part is when they first reached out, we were actually in stealth mode. This is back in 2016. We didn't even have a website. There was no information anywhere.
Why were you stealth mode?
Well, I think part of the whole goal that I had was really just focus on building. Don't focus on, I think a lot of startups, like way too early on, they focus on like trying to build some image or, generating a splash or whatever it may be before they kind of get ahead of the product before it really even exists. Many autonomous vehicle or other LiDAR companies are, notorious for this.
Did you put out a paper?
No, nothing.
Not even a paper?
Not even a paper.
So how did they freaking find you stealth mode?
Stealth mode. Yeah, it was. We were in deep stealth mode. Like we were literally like people would live and work in the same like compound.
How
up
would
in the
they
hill
know?
in
How did
Portola
Volvo
Valley.
find out?
It was a thing. There's some chatter deep in the industry that people were hearing what we were working on, and that we were going to create some crazy new system that could revolutionize, auto tech and autonomous driving, and yeah, it was something that they had just reached out of the blue to go say, hey, we heard about this, we know you're in stealth mode, we want to see it, and so they were able to get a hold of us. They came up and to go check out the prototypes that we had, and
in the Bay.
Yeah, this is in the Bay. This is in Portola Valley, in Silicon Valley, just right outside of Palo Alto. It actually housed a bunch of like tanks and military vehicles and other things there too. And it was funny, like we took over this tank farm that was, hidden away and used it for integrating lasers on vehicles. But the funny part is that after they saw it, I mean, it was like they literally just, quote unquote, they're like, fell out of their chair, as they said, when they saw the data that was output as a result of this new LiDAR system and what was possible when you had like 50x the performance of anything that was there and could be something that could ultimately go on a car for on the order of $1,000, getting these huge roof racks full of sensors and a supercomputer in the trunk and everything that's required and condensing it. And it's something that can be seamlessly integrated onto a production vehicle. It's a complete game changer. And that's exactly what happened.
When did Mercedes come involved?
I would say it really, it was a few years ago, it really started to ramp up. Different automakers take different times to come to decisions. And I think when you look at something like a Mercedes, when they make a decision and have like conviction around something, really, they're all in on it. It's something that they don't take lightly by any means. And that's where we just see great opportunities, like even in the Mercedes case of, we go from one vehicle model of something of like as an option on something to now going across, the majority of the lineup in terms of the vehicles that are able to really get integrated into and just like expanding a contract, specifically for the Mercedes case. I think it was public that we have a multi-billion dollar contract with them there too that goes across their vehicle lineup. And
wow.
As an example, that's amazing.
They're taking this concept of luxury and doing it in a way where safety and luxury are synonymous with one another. And your product, the vision that you have and the premise and the purpose of their product, I love cars and I love my Mercedes. And I'm not trying to throw a little freaking Mercedes commercial in there, but I'm just saying it's going to feel a lot more safer when your tech is in it, bro. That's wow.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've seen Mercedes as one of the most intensive but impressive companies that we've ever dealt with and worked with. It's like I said, absolutely incredible what they've been able to do from a vehicle standpoint, technology standpoint, just the sheer innovation that goes into
you said it's $1 billion contract
models. Multi-billion, yeah.
So I'm sorry. So you're saying it's a multi-billion dollar contract?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Dang, with the heavy emphasis on multi. It's nice.
Yeah, yes.
It's nice.
Yeah,
oh,
but,
so speaking of which.
Yeah, but that's the thing is that these things are, and a lot of people don't understand, how this stuff works for the automotive industry. But like, it means a lot around that because when you do that, you'll have the visibility for many, many years to come in terms of being integrated. Oftentimes, 7 years as long as 10 years. For the length of these programs. You get that long-term visibility that a lot of times you just don't have like with other, for example, consumer product companies. That just makes it very, very meaningful, very sticky. And, the automotive industry, again, it's just so hard to break into. Once you're in, then, This is just the start. I think we reported at the end of last year like $3.5 billion total contract value as part of our forward-looking order book. Our target is to be as much as $60 billion by the end of the decade. So that's just as a reference point of like how big of an impact we can have.
$60 billion profit
of booked business. So
Wow.
so then that which then converts into revenue and profits associated for the company. So we're in that critical juncture that where the first time that we have that contract value in a very, very meaningful way, that's where you start to see a pretty significant impact being had at part of this whole inflection point of curve. And that really kicks off mid next year of when you start seeing that huge inflection.
You started the company at what age?
Oh yeah, it was like 16, 17. Yeah.
Right. 12 years ago, you started this company. 12 years ago was not that long ago. Was there anybody that you were rocking with, friends that was on this journey with you, that is still in this journey with you now?
Well, I'd say there's people in my company. There's other kinds of companies. We're in a fortunate position where we've really been able to create this breakthrough technology that's allowed us to have this very dominant market position. I think we have more contract value than probably every other autonomous vehicle in LiDAR company in the industry and world combined. At this point, in terms of actually materializing into production vehicles that have this kind of capability and functionality. And I think that's something that ends up obviously as a really great position for us. There was a companies back in the day who basically either went bankrupt or were sold, back in the time when everyone was like, oh, is there any way that you're going to be able to beat this company Quanergy, or any way that you're going to be able to, how on earth you're going to beat Velodyne, at the time, like from even a LiDAR standpoint. Yeah, it was so funny. And those are kind of the startup type companies.
Like when you're raising money, the VCs, people that,
absolutely,
there's somebody else in this space.
Absolutely. And there's just like so many things, like so many people.
And what was your answer to those things?
Well, you had these companies like that Quanergy example that it was like some like PhD founder, whatever it is, like interesting, like theoretical ideas, just like turn it into didn't work in terms of the product and in terms of being able to scale it successfully. And I think that that was very clear, but it's like very hard. You can imagine as like a 16 or 17-year-old saying, hey, we're going to go do this and build all this and beat not only these companies, but also the major companies that are doing it, like all the automakers and all the tier ones. And like I said, the Googles and Apples and everyone else that was trying to build these kinds of systems at the time. People were obviously very, very skeptical of, but were able to pull it off. We ended up building the technology that really did make that breakthrough difference. It materialized. It wasn't just a theoretical idea. You had companies that had billion plus valuations, before there was even a product. And that was the crazy part, is that here we are trying to prove ourselves, on this. And it was the same thing for autonomous vehicle companies. It was the same story. You see, tens of billions of value before there's really even a scalable product launch or contract value, other stuff, et cetera. It's been a pretty intensive journey, and I think we've really rose above the pack in terms of what we can show. But it's kind of funny. You'd actually think that destroying competition is really good for value. It turns out when you have comps that are competitors that you also destroy value with, it actually hurts your value as well, and at least maybe temporarily. It's kind of funny. It doesn't actually make any fundamental or logical sense, but that's the way that some of these things work, and some of the way that hedge funds play these things. So I've learned a lot, over the past handful of years in terms of the dynamics for this, and to get to that 60 billion in terms of our forward-looking order book in terms of contract value, and to get to the target 5 billion revenue, a couple billion in profit, on the order of doubling year over year, by the end of the decade. That's something. It only takes 3 to 4% market share in market penetration to build a 100 billion plus company, or multi-100 billion company. It only takes a very small percentage of market penetration. You know, a lot less than you would think, because the auto industry is just so massive. You know, there's like, you know, $4 trillion worth of cars sold every year, trillions of dollars worth of insurance policies that are paid out. Like, you know, it's just so crazy to think about the scale. So capturing a slice of that in a differentiated and unique way, that's why you see even the Tesla example of, like, you know, it's a credible example. This is what they did for the EV world. You know what? It's only like a couple percent of the, you know, global market sales, but it's a greater market capitalization than everyone else in the industry combined. Like, why, you know, $500 billion, you know, maybe even $1 trillion, because it's a fundamentally differentiated capability from an EV standpoint that's able to make a difference in impact. And
So you're not the richest, youngest person in the world because you created an app that competes with other gaming apps. You've put your brain to solving a problem, and that problem is saving lives. And you want to save lives with these lasers and LiDAR in a field that people probably didn't think was as successful of a solution than cameras. And you did it in such ways that when you went to raise money, people were like, well, what about these guys? Like,
Totally.
what makes you 23, 21, however old you were, 18, what makes you think that you're going to do that? And that could be daunting to a youth. Like, oh man, this institution doesn't think. They're comparing me to these adults that are, right? These PhD cats. I dropped out of college, but I have this vision to save lives using this technology, executed this way. Like, wow, it's pretty freaking awesome. That conviction, that discipline of thought, not only on a technical level, but an entrepreneurial business level. You are a superstar for the next generation of business. Yes, you're the youngest billionaire from Cali. You know, I gotta give Cali some love.
Exactly.
Just south of just down off the 5 or 4 or 5. Now you live in Florida. And now with your success, you're like, yo, I think I want to go buy Forbes. Like, what? Why you want to do that? Like, what made you want to go buy Forbes?
Forbes is just something that was pretty unique and interesting, and something that I grew up reading. I was actually where, you know, a lot of the different business information and, you know, economic metrics and just understanding the profiles of other successful entrepreneurs, where I got a lot of that information, you know, early on, you know, in the days of just like deep in learning mode. And when it comes to the modern media landscape, there's a lot of opportunities for some pretty clear improvement, and something that Forbes has a unique opportunity to do as kind of the most read, you know, business media publication. And in this case, I think it's all about ushering in this whole next generation of capitalism. I think what has been very successful and really what made Luminar successful is this overall mission of being able to show how you can create incredible amounts of value for the world, like the safety mission, while also making money at the same time. And I think this is something that kind of in a unique position to be able to help usher in that the next generation of capitalism for. And you take a look at a legacy brand, you know, of something with the magnitude of Forbes, and it's just a massive amount of opportunity for impact. So I think it's 106 years now of history. I mean, back when the original Forbes family, I mean, they had that 100-year vision for it that they realized. I think now there's that opportunity to take it for the next 100 years. You know, of course, unlike Luminar, you know, it's not necessarily going to be that trillion-dollar business, you know, out of this. I think it was more something that I saw as an incredible opportunity for impact. Of course, you know, a great business case for the brand, and the team there can create other kinds of, you know, businesses that leverage that brand in unique ways, and I'm sure there'll be more to talk about in the future on.
Do you think your youthfulness, you're coming into a field with fresh new ideas, new ways of executing it, do you think that's added to the success of Luminar? Do you believe that fresh perspective is why Luminar's successful?
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, having that first principles, unique perspective and fresh perspective is unquestionably a huge driver behind why that's successful. And just the overall mentality of starting from the ground up, you know, also just not taking no for an answer, not accepting failure on anything. You know, I'm very much a perfectionist and take a clean slate approach at whatever problem it is that you're trying to solve. And for that matter, also Forbes, you know, back in the day in the media landscape for everything. I think that's what the great entrepreneurs of our generation have been able to do, and that's what we're trying to emulate.
Wow. You're super inspirational. Wish you could see what I see as far as Austin plus all the millions of first kids. You have this potential where they could see what's possible through what you've been able to do, that you're doing now, still at 28, is transformational. It's powerful. It's what America needs. It's what the world needs. You're at the beginning of your career. Like 10 years from now,
Just
bro,
the start.
you're 38.
Exactly.
You're 38 10 years from now.
Yeah.
That's still
right.
freaking young as hell. And the things that you're going to do by 2033,
It's going to be pretty crazy.
right?
It's just the start.
20 years from now, you're 58.
Or 48.
Sorry. 20 years from now, you're 48. Just checking to see if you was a mathematician, bro. Trying to check your chops.
Exactly.
You're 48.
But trust me, it'll feel like I'm 58 by the time.
You're 40. You're my age 20 years from now. I remember when I was 28. We just launched Where's the Love? Where's the Love was a song we're like, oh, we wrote this right after 9/11. And that was the first inch of success that we got to taste.
It was amazing, yeah.
It's 20 years ago. And my life has changed dramatically after that. The world's changed. I've had some contribution to it, not like the contribution that you're going to do in your 20-year journey. And the big automobile companies recognize, you know, your brilliance, your problem-solving skills, and the kids, bro. Don't shy away from the kids. You're needed. And the world's going to be a lot better once you connect those dots.
Well, thank you. And I know a lot of those same kids see you as a fantastic inspiration for everyone there too. So
yeah, but it's different.
Awesome
Like I'm
stuff.
48. I'm talking to like 18, 14-year-olds like, listen. They're going to be like, really? They can see a little, they'll get some inspo, but yo, bro, you're like, you speak their language. They see, they know.
Yeah, I'm still
you know
catching
what
up
it's
on
like.
some of the Gen Z terms, but yeah, for the most part, you know.
Real stuff. Yeah, the Gen Z terms are kind of like, yeet, yeet. It's cool. Thank you so much, Austin.
Fantastic. Thanks for opportunity, and great to see you. And like I said, you're an inspiration to so many. So great to
Thanks,
be here.
bro.